Jeff Hardy here. We've got a conversation this week about sabbaticals. And so we've been talking about this. Grant and I have been talking off and on, and Grant has had some helpful interaction with Rachel Meisel, who you see on our call. And so we asked Rachel if she just kind of briefly interview us today about what's upcoming with sabbaticals and help everyone think about it. So Rachel, turn it over to you.
Yes, I thought I would just ask some of the questions that you all might be having, as you've probably heard some murmurings about Jeff's sabbatical coming up. And then is it the following year, Grant's sabbatical, or is it in two? I don't remember.
Following.
But there'll be a couple of sabbaticals coming up. So first of all, what is sabbatical and why is it important for a pastor to take an extended leave away?
Yeah, so briefly, sabbatical, as you can hear, is related to the word Sabbath. And so, anyone who's read the Old Testament has a strong sense of the importance of Sabbath. And Sabbath is not just a one day out of seven. In the Old Testament, Exodus 23, right, mandates a 1 year out of seven Sabbath, where they rest from the tilling of the land. And then at the end of 7 of those cycles, there's a year of Jubilee. And so the Old Testament is really big on the importance of rest, right? We all understand that we live in a world that doesn't rest much. We're always on, we're always going. That's true for most of us. And so rest really matters. And in the church world, for a long time, there's been a practice of sabbatical where churches say, we understand that in some ways, pastors are always on. Pastors are accessible and want to be to their people and want to be able to engage when people need help the most, right? That's rarely easy to plan that. As we all know, crises happen at 3 a.m, not usually on a schedule. So because of the intensity sometimes of that being always on, and because just the biblical pattern of we think people should have serious rest, that part of healthy living and even healthy work is resting really well, because the gospel actually is about rest fundamentally, right? We rest in Jesus and then we work. So we think we work and then we rest. The gospel says we rest first and then we work. It's really important. Churches value sabbaticals for pastors. And so our church gave me and Jordan both sabbaticals previously. I had one in 2018. And as we looked at other churches' policies and timing, and me needing another sabbatical, and Grant joining us when we hired him recently, we sort of thought through all this, and we landed on giving me a sabbatical this summer and Grant one next summer.
Great. So tell us the how of your sabbatical. How will you be spending the time this summer with your family and also with some of your study that you'll be doing?
Yeah, so I'm doing something a bit different this summer, and part of what you'll see if you look into how different people do sabbaticals is there's a wide variety of ways to do it, because people have different needs at different moments in their ministry career, ministry life, and personal life. So some people's sabbaticals are primarily for writing. Some people's sabbaticals are primarily for rest. Some of them are for maybe focused on spiritual or family renewal. I'm trying to accomplish in some ways maybe all of the above this summer. And the session really graciously offered me for the month of May to spend 80% of my work time focused on writing my doctoral project. So I'm writing a project for my Doctor of Ministry degree, and I've just gotten that approved a few weeks ago. So May, I'll be around some. I'll be preaching, leading staff meetings, some of those things, but less than usual. So May is going to be a writing month. And then June, July, and August is the true time off. And so we are planning, at the moment, the big chunk of our how is we're going to be in the high country outside of Boone from kind of mid-June to early August. And we did something very similar in 2018. And it's the best thing we've ever done as a family, truly. It's a common experience for people to say, oh, I didn't realize how sort of stressed out I was until I had some extended rest, right? And for your kids to even say, wow, you seem a lot more fun all of a sudden. Or you seem more like yourself. That's sad, right? That we all get stressed out like that. And we all know that the grind gets to us all. But that extended period of time focused on physical rest, emotional rest, spiritual rest. We did a lot of hiking, a lot of reading, a lot of time together as a family, listening to music, um, going on walks at the sunset, right? Stuff that really helped us to slow down, to connect with each other, to connect with the Lord. So a lot of our sabbatical this summer is going to be spent in a similar way. And we still have a few things that we're working out on the details. And, our kids are older now and have more complicated schedules. So at the end of our sabbatical, we still have a little bit of time and money to play with to make the end of the sabbatical great after we leave Boone. And we haven't quite figured that out yet.
Good. And Grant, you're on this call as well. And I think a lot of us are probably wondering how Jeff being gone this summer, how will that affect your role in your work at Cross Park this summer?
Yeah, and it's one of the, I think, great benefits of having a multi-pastor staff is some greater flexibility with situations like this. So with Jeff being gone, he'll be out of the pulpit 3 weeks in May, and I'll preach 2 of those. And I think Nick is on the schedule to do one of those. And then I'll do the bulk of the preaching in the summer as well. But we have some other folks filling the pulpit, Cross Park, the familiar faces to Cross Park people that'll be in the pulpit 3 weeks during the summer, I think. So as you know, the summer's a lot, in some ways more laid back, programming wise. So, we're not going to have Sunday school and, staff meetings, which we're doing weekly right now, and Jeff leads those. We may go to every other week or monthly staff meetings. So dialing back some of the administrative leadership kind of stuff a little bit. But Sunday morning is going to look very much the same. We're not going to change anything while pastor's away. That's a really bad idea for a church to do when a pastor goes on sabbatical. So we're going to try and keep things as consistent as possible. Just would be me in the pulpit and primarily instead of Jeff. And a lot of one of the things that you typically do during the summer is plan for the fall, right? So, but we're already talking about sermon series for the fall and Sunday school for the fall. And so all the bulk of that planning will be done hopefully by the end of April, maybe a little bit in May. So there will be some details that we need to work out over the course of the summer, but the big picture stuff, the decisions that we would want Jeff involved with, all that stuff will be done before he leaves.
Okay.
Is the goal.
And then just one final question. How can Cross Park support you both? Support you, Jeff, as you're stepping away and in these months leading up to your sabbatical, and Grant, how can we support you when you're doing the bulk of the preaching this summer? Is there anything that Cross Park you think could do to support you both?
That's great.
Great question.
So again, Grant has not had a sabbatical in his career. And so when we hired him, we knew that, and we said, we want to supply you with a sabbatical as early as is reasonable. And so I'm doing one this summer. He's doing one next summer. We thought that was a really good way. Then we can trade off and handle duties. But my experience of sabbatical at Cross Park in 2018 was really encouraging. And I mean, particularly the church, the members of the church were so encouraging. I felt really lifted up in prayer, that people were really praying. I mean, again, we consistently say it's the best thing we've ever done as a family. And I think a big part of that is because Cross Park people were praying for us. We felt it was an honor and a privilege and a delight to get to go on a sabbatical. What a unique thing it is. And we felt that from the congregation, right? The congregation was super supportive and joyful about the idea of us going on sabbatical. So I'm confident that Cross Park will probably naturally do some of those things because they've done them in the past, right? We feel so supported. I've always felt super supported as the pastor of Cross Park, and I think praying for our family and for a really good time, quiet time, rest time, time in the Word would be the key things that I would find supportive from the congregation. And those are the kind of things that Cross Park is pretty good at naturally. What do you think, Grant?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is prayer, because we really, I mean, it's so humbling to be a pastor to be able to under shepherd under Jesus, and then have people in your church consistently praying for you and telling you they're praying for you and being an encouragement. more than one season of my life, I know that we have survived on the prayers of God's people. And um, so I just want to, yeah, reiterate the importance of that. That is, Jeff and Trish and the girls go away this summer. Um, an encouragement might be every time they come to mind, pray for them. If there's like, you watch a movie and think, oh, Jeff would love this, pray for him. Just that he would be able to rest and that he and Trish would have great relational time, and time with the girls would be really sweet. And yeah, so I think that's the main thing. And certainly I agree that there may be some, a goodbye event we do or a welcome back event that we do at some point for the Hardys when they leave and return. But yeah, just as they come to mind, lift them up briefly with a word of prayer um, and dream for them what a great summer it could be, and then pray those dreams. And I think that's a huge deal. And I mean, just also to say, there's a lot of generosity and a lot of grace from a congregation that sends their pastor away. I mean, that is a beautiful, rare thing. The majority of pastors I know have not had opportunity to do an extended sabbatical. And so that Cross Park is committed to that is a beautiful, gracious thing. And yeah, it's a beautiful thing. So gratitude on my part, Jeff's as well, I'm sure. But yeah, prayer and press on in your graciousness. That's kind of a weird thing to say, but yeah.
Yeah, it's funny, Rachel, when I've had several pastors ask me, right, like, hey, how did you get a sabbatical? And it's an easy answer. It's not that helpful to them typically. The answer was my elders brought it up before I had ever thought about it. So I remember, I'm pretty sure it was Tyre Green, whatever, a couple of years in, he's like, all right, we need to start thinking about your sabbatical here in a couple of years. And I was like, oh, wow, fantastic. I hadn't even gotten that far, right? So it just illustrates how great our session is, how great our congregation is.
Yeah,
And we, right.
Go ahead, finish that thought.
Well, our hope really is that the sabbatical is not just good for the pastor and his family, but it's actually good for the church, right? And so as we were talking before we got on the call, it's really good for me to be out of commission and for the church to continue doing what God's called us to do, because it just reminds all of us that, we all do ministry together. We're all doing the work of the church. We're all involved in kingdom work. I have one role, but it's just one role, and I'm just one guy, and it's important. And also, we don't really need me. And I think sabbatical is a great way to remind all of us again, hey, God's at work, the Spirit's at work. We're glad we have pastors and elders and deacons and women's care team and staff and all the roles people play. But also, the church is never dependent on the work of any individual. And that's a healthy thing for a church to always be reconnected with.
Yeah, and just a quick story on that. I remember reading, I think it was Eugene Peterson in his biography or his autobiography, his memoir, tells the story of a time, I think it was vacation. I don't think it was a sabbatical, but he was on vacation and something happened in somebody's life in the church and they couldn't get in touch with him. And of course, this was pre-cell phone and internet and all that jazz. They didn't get in touch with him. And when he got back, they met with him and said they were so angry. They were really upset that he didn't come back for this event. It may have been someone passed away or whatever it was. But they said, but the fact that you weren't there forced me to lean on Jesus more. So I'm glad you didn't come back, because if you had, I wouldn't have ever gotten to that point where I was really trusting Jesus with this really hard thing. It's one story, but I think it illustrates the point that, yeah, pastors have a role to play in the church, but it's a role, and ultimately we need Jesus too. And so it's an opportunity for all of us to be, in a sense, recalibrating our attention, our affections on our Savior, and not on ourselves, as it were.
Yep. Well, this has been great. I think that you've answered my questions, and hopefully any other questions that are simmering away in people's brains. But I know we'll talk more as we get closer to May about the sabbatical and what that will look like for the church. But in the meanwhile, we're glad you get to do it, Jeff, and know you're leaning toward May and eager for that rest. So
Yes.
thank you for answering my questions.
Thanks for asking them. And thanks, CrossPark, for your support always. So that's it for our video for today. We're going to sit here for just a second to make sure we don't cut the video off too fast. And CrossPark, hope this is helpful to you. Take care.